The purpose of devotional gatherings, especially within the Baha'i faith, because we don't have clergy and we don't have a regular meeting time, is to get to know the Word or the sacred words, but also to get to know our community. You know, the faith is very community-based and neighborhood-based, because if you can build bonds of a community, then you can build bonds everywhere and eventually have a global community. So that's what we're working on. And this devotional gathering is on Valentine's Day. So I think the theme is going to be love. Are you talking about equality of men and women?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I am.
The wing quote.
That one, I don't want to attempt that one unless I know it perfectly.
It gets recited at a lot of weddings.
That was like, that one, when I heard that one, I was like a different person after hearing it. It was
Yeah.
one of those moments. You're like, I can never unhear that, right? Like, oh my gosh. Oof.
I do love whoever did the search engine optimization for the Baha'i faith. Yeah. It's always easy to find exactly what I want. It's always the first thing. It's always like, thank you, IT people who are Baha'is. I don't know, but they do a good job. Yeah. The world of humanity has two wings. One is women and the other men, wrote Abdul Baha. Not until both wings are equally developed can the bird fly. Should one wing remain weak, flight is impossible.
Right. Come on now, right?
Yeah. And then it becomes important that the faith started 200 years ago, because you realize someone said that around that time.
Right.
Although even still today, it would be a huge issue.
Right.
But yeah.
That concept is so underrated.
Devotional gatherings like the one that I attended, where people were just genuine and themselves and allowing for whatever I brought into the space, I think that has a great potential for impacting others, because I think this world is thirsting for spiritual community. I know that here in the US, there's, especially in LA, there's a wellness culture and a mindfulness culture that's very divorced from actual spirituality. But when it's pulled away from its indigenous roots or the reasons why people had those practices to start with, then it just becomes self-centered, in my opinion, even though it can still have some benefit. But a devotional gathering, like the way Baha'is can do devotional gatherings, it infuses the spirit back into it. So regardless of what the activity is, I think it makes space for anyone who wants to be there to feel welcome. And through that, they learn more about themselves, they learn more about this faith, they learn more about what spiritual path they may want, regardless of what that may be. And I just think that's beautiful.
So yeah, I know it's the newest faith, like one of the newest world religions, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, and I always love that, talking about this faith and the kind of universal, I'd say the universal approaches it takes. It always leaves someone with a smile on their face. It always leaves someone with feeling something new that they didn't know they could feel before. And it also, I feel like, every time it's reminded people that there's always a new way of looking at something, or there's always a new way of accepting people, which is cool. Because I think acceptance, as much as we say it in a lot of other faiths, I remember the Baha'i faith being one of the ones that really stood out on that. Where I really, you sound like you really want me to, convert, but at the same time, not more than just accepting me as I am. Like I could feel that around so many people that were my Baha'i faith friends, friends that were learning about the Baha'i faith or friends that were even newly Baha'i even. They were just so good at accepting and just talking, where are you at in this spiritual journey? And I love that.
I wrote a book. It's called Unconquerable Soul, An Owner's Guide to Self-Healing. And I wrote it as really a way to heal myself. The title, some people might recognize, is from a poem called Invictus, written by William Ernest Henley. And one of the lines in it is, I thank whatever guides may be for my unconquerable soul. It was my dad's favorite poem. I was in a really dark place. I was grieving and going through a lot of transitions with medical school and feeling like I wasn't good enough. And there was a lot going on. There was actually a bad breakup involved in this process. And actually, I was suicidal. And I ended up reaching out for something, trying to figure out what was gonna fill that void. And I reached out to homeopathic remedies. They helped me tremendously in that space. And then I realized, okay, it's really difficult to get from being in a very low, dark place to treatment all by yourself. You have to have a support team around you, or like a social circle that can give you enough buoyancy to have you seek that kind of care. And a lot of people don't have that. That was my reason for wanting to write it, was that there's this gap that our medical model doesn't really fill, of how do you go get treatment. My teachers were often trying to figure out how to keep me motivated, or keep me busy, I guess, because I finished my work before a lot of my classmates. But that was only when I entered public school. So my mother actually homeschooled us, all 3 kids, for 11 years. But for me, that meant I went to public school in 3rd grade, and I was 6. And then that's when I found out that learning wasn't fun for everyone. My name is Kay Hubbard. I'm a naturopathic doctor, which means that I could do a lot of things, but what I choose to do with it, I spend a lot of time having private consultations with clients through Zoom. So I work from home. I was raised in a Christian family on the East Coast. So I was born in Pennsylvania, but I was raised mostly in Southern Virginia. Actually, both of my parents have passed away, but I have 2 older brothers, Willie and Marcus, who don't live in LA, but they live across the country. And they're awesome. They're good big brothers. Since my mother passed, we found a way to be even closer. So like through the pandemic, we've been able to stay more in touch with Zoom because it's what everyone was doing. So surprisingly, even though there's distance, we managed to get closer. As a child, I really liked reading. I've always been a nerd, bookworm. I also got that from my dad. Sports were never my thing. So my mother went to a historically Black college, Virginia State University, and got her 4-year degree in elementary education. My mother then went on to, in one of her earlier jobs in her career, she worked for a space program in the business administration side, which is where she met my father. He was a liaison between the government and the contractors who deployed satellites for space programs. I got accepted to Duke, and it was one of the most exciting things to happen to me. Of course, I was 16. But when I got into Duke, my dad was like, they have an amazing medical school. Now's the time. And I was like, I definitely saw some people cry who had been in organic chemistry. It's the weed out class for pre-meds. And I didn't want that life. So I said, no, I'm not going to grad school. I'm gonna go work in entertainment. I wanna be an agent. And that's why I moved to LA. And I worked at William Morris for a while, and then I realized I didn't want to be an agent. I was in my 20s, and I had moved to Los Angeles after graduating from Duke, which is in North Carolina. And I was working and meeting new people, making friends. At that time, I was no longer Christian. I had been insulted by a few churches that I wanted to join. Through no particular fault of their own. So at one point when I said I don't want to get rebaptized, I've been baptized, they told me that I shouldn't come to any of the social events because it would confuse single men in the church if I was attending regularly but not the same type of Christian who understood the Bible the exact and precise way that they did. So I just left. And I got tired of trying to find churches and clergy that I supported and people who let women preach. And it's just, there's a lot of different types of way to go to church. And it was exhausting trying to find a home. I had a new friend invite me to meet some of his other friends. And so they had a home concert where they just let people sing inside their house and made a night out of it with a host and, all the things. And then after that, we went to a Christmas party. And I'm with a few people who I know not very well. I had just met them. But one is a Colombian woman. There's a white man from the Pacific Northwest. There's an East African man. There's just this motley crew of people who are all around the same age that I happen to be there with. And when we get to the party, I immediately go and get a drink. It's at a mansion and they had alcohol in the kitchen. So I do that and none of them came with me. And I was confused. Because it's you walk into a party, as a more introverted person, the standard thing to do is to go find something to put in your hand and to survey the space so you know what corner to stand in. But none of them did that. And I thought, I guess they're just all extroverts because they're actors and dancers and stuff. They're cooler than me. I get my drink and then I report back and I'm like, here's the drink. Do y'all want one? I can make you one. I'm trying to be nice. And they just said, thank you. I was like, okay. But they didn't say we don't drink, which stood out to me. But so that happens. And then I'm standing there with my drink and I'm watching all of them have fun with no alcohol. And they're the only ones really dancing, they're laughing, they're having a good time. And so when we walked out that night, I stopped two of them and I said, okay, how do y'all really know each other? Because I've known actors in LA who compete for everything, who are, there's this subtle tension between them, but y'all lived very freely and you enjoyed yourselves and you didn't need anything to enjoy yourself. Like, but there's some other bond. And they both smiled. But they said, oh, we're Baha'is. And so we have like a spiritual friendship. And that's what you're seeing. That's what you're witnessing. And I said, okay, I may have heard of that before. I'm not sure. But tell me more about it. So they proceeded to tell me about Baha'u'llah and just a little bit, because it was really late at night. It was pretty quick. But they were like, you should come to more of our events if you're interested. Or just hang out, no pressure. And I thought, okay, they seem reasonable. And I saw in action this spiritual bond that they have that makes no sense to me, because I've been in church all my life and I've never seen people get along that way. And then I started going to Spiritual Talk, which was a devotion here in Los Angeles that had 75 to 100 people every week crammed into a living room, just talking about things. It was a space for people of any religion or no religion to just talk about spiritual concepts with no pressure. And if someone brought alcohol, because it was a potluck event, they would just tuck the wine under the table, carry on, no one made a fuss, and then hand it back to whoever brought it at the end of the night. And for some, I know I'm bringing up the alcohol a lot, but there's something to not being the person that's like, oh, we don't drink, because it feels very judgmental. But to have the presence and the patience to just be like, oh, I'm choosing not to drink today. Does that mean I've chosen that every day for the last 30 years? Sure. But I don't need to make this an issue for you or make it awkward. So I appreciated that type of energy in that space. And I went for like 2 years. And then I declared as a Baha'i. I believe that being around very genuine people who cared about me regardless of what my religion was is how I got from Christianity is the only way to there's so many other avenues to God. Christians are often taught that you're born into sin, meaning you come into this world and because Adam and Eve sinned, like you have to accept Christ to then be worthy of going to heaven or having a righteous path. But Baha'is are taught that you're born noble. And it sounds like anyone freely thinking would just jump on and choose, I was born noble, like that's great. I want to say that feels better. I'll speak for myself as a Christian. The reason I needed to have an ongoing relationship was based almost entirely on this idea that I would fall apart if I didn't, and be unworthy if I didn't. Whereas to be a Baha'i is a choice every day because I'm noble either way. No matter what has happened in the past, if you search with your heart, the answer will come like a breeze.